Contrary to what many people believe, homelessness is still very much an epidemic here in the United States. Perhaps the greatest snapshot of that is New York City, where poverty has just reached its highest levels since the Great Depression of the 1930s. Take a look at this. This is data out by the Department of Homeless Services, and it shows the number of people in New York City who sleep in shelters each night. As you can see, that number has steadily increased since 1983. In fact, as of September of 2013, there were about 52,400 people in shelters. That's a 69% increase since just January of 2002. But perhaps what's most unfortunate is that a large number of those falling under the poverty line are now children. As you can see, the number of children on the streets of New York has now exceeded 22,000. It's a shocking number that was explored recently in an in-depth New York Times story that followed the daily life of one 11-year-old homeless girl named Dasani. And now here to discuss this a little bit more is RT's Anastasia Churkina, who joins us from our New York studio. Anastasia, thanks for joining me. So this New York Times article chronicled the year in the life of this young girl. Her name is Dasani. She lives in one of these shelters with her family. It's a heartbreaking story. Can you explain the conditions that she lives in and tell us, is this reflective of what many homeless kids are experiencing?
Well, Ameera, unfortunately, the answer is yes. It is reflective of these staggering numbers of children that are going through homelessness as we speak. This particular New York Times piece, a very in-depth piece, a five-parter, chronicling the life of this 11-year-old girl who lives in a really disheveled Brooklyn shelter with her parents and 7 siblings. She takes care of her babies, not her babies, her sister, her younger brothers and sisters. The conditions of the shelter are just, they seemed mind-blowing when you read about them, because this is something that is happening in the United States, in New York City, one of the richest cities in the U.S., and yet this is a mice and rat infested shelter where there's been allegations of sexual assaults and sexual predators that have gone unaccountable, and just the struggles of this little girl showing exactly what it is to be living a life like that in this article, really pushing forward a new wave of debate surrounding child homelessness in the U.S., like you rightfully said, at 22,000, the highest number since the Great Depression in New York. We talked a little bit to New Yorkers about what they make of all this. Take a listen.
It's quite alarming that as the economy picks up, that indicator is getting worse.
It could get higher, because I mean, like, things are getting better, but things are getting worse, so it's kind of like this. But a lot of people just can't afford to live anymore. Like, ways of living, and being in New York, this is like, you know, the worst place to be. So maybe people can like go somewhere else besides the bigger cities and, you know, more metropolis suburb areas and try to make, you know, their lives work. But yeah, it's hard here. I'm an adult, and it's hard for me to maintain with no kids, so I can't imagine families trying to maintain here.
The 1% at the top has been increasing its more than its fair share, and the people at the bottom tend to be completely left behind.
Well, you know, Ameera, to give you some more perspective on how bad it really is, because these numbers are hard to imagine, the New York Times makes a good point. If all of the homeless children of New York City were to go into Madison Square Garden, which is a huge stadium in Manhattan, as many as over 4,800 children would be left without a seat. So imagine that. It's pretty staggering numbers.
That's really, really scary to think about, actually. Well, Anastasia, could you talk a little bit more about what is really thought to be behind these numbers? What is behind this rapid increase in homelessness, specifically for families?
Well, Ameera, what we have is a continuation of increasing home prices, of course, met with very low incomes, and it's a widening gap, and experts are saying this is likely to continue. So because housing prices are going up and so many people are still unable to find work, what we have is this situation where as many as 52,000 people are in shelters every night in New York City, and it's 12,000 people and families, 12,000 families, and those families have children. And the sad part really is that the children are the ones we don't see, and you know, they are the invisible homeless, because it's, you know, you're not able to tell on the street which child is suffering and who is not. And the numbers are that 1 in 5 children in the U.S. are living in poverty currently, and the New York Times again goes on to say that this is the highest number in a developed nation except for Romania.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that. Well, some people are attributing the growth of income inequality in the city to the policies of Michael Bloomberg. We saw sort of a staggering increase in homelessness after 2002, which is sort of when he, came into power. What exactly are they referring to? What are these policies?
Well, also from 2008, homelessness has gone up by a staggering 50%. So it's just the reason people are talking about Bloomberg, of course, is because he has been mayor and just stepped down for 12 years. And he has been and is one of the richest people in the United States. And it's under his reign that this enormous inequality gap kind of surfaced. Obviously, it had a lot to do with the financial crisis of 2008, but also, Bloomberg implemented certain policies back in 2004 where he said homeless people should be made more self-reliant and provided short-term rent assistance to homeless people in New York City, hoping that this would kind of empower them. This did not happen. So a lot of people are blaming Bloomberg for the reason that also millions of dollars were spent in certain projects in New York City, whereas homelessness clearly, obviously, continues to be a huge plight of so many people here.
All very interesting stuff. Well, thanks for your reporting, RT correspondent Anastasia Churkina.